Hello, I'm Michael Voris.
And I'm Father Pablo, Catholic missionary priest. We really want you to watch every week the one true faith. Had you left that one true faith, please come home. We're waiting for you because we love you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this installment of The One True Faith, the show that we say is the most disturbing hour on television because we talk about our eternal destinies. It's the only thing that matters. Are you going to heaven or are you going to hell? That's all that matters. Doesn't matter how much money you make. Doesn't matter how successful you ever become in the terms of the world. What matters, are you going to be in heaven or are you going to be in hell? And the truths that we have to realize in order to get ourselves to heaven, to cooperate with God's graces to get us to heaven, are very hard truths. It is very difficult, as Jesus has mentioned many times in Scriptures, it is very difficult to live a good and holy life. We must rely on His graces, and we must cooperate with the sacraments of the Church. We must, with those graces, we must strive to be saints, period. We must strive to be saints. That message has gotten lost in the last 40 years or so. In popular culture, the idea of being good and okay has kind of shifted around. The bar has been set lower on, our performance as what it means to be just a good person. It's kind of shifted around a little bit. Some of the youngsters sitting here, you have no idea what life was like 40 years ago or 35 years ago. It was a whole different world. It's a whole different world even from when I grew up. My father and my mother were constantly telling me, you have no idea. We all know this. You didn't have to used to lock your doors, and now it's crazy. There is a pall of evil that has settled over the world. Anybody who denies that is simply denying the truth. The Catholic Church, in many quarters, has tried to voice that message loud and clear, and in other areas has fallen somewhat short of the mark. We're here to try to help be a voice for the true faith, the Holy Catholic faith, to enunciate very clearly, without any ambiguity, what the teachings of the Catholic Church are. And that's what we're here for. That's what this apostolate exists for. Our topic today is the culture of death. That was a term coined by, brought to major popularity, worldwide popularity, by Pope John Paul II. But it was first used in a homily by Cardinal John O'Connor in New York, in St. Patrick's Cathedral. But the Pope heard that and thought, that's a perfect encapsulation of everything I'm trying to say. So he started using the term and it has caught on. And of course, the flip side of that is the culture of life. So when you hear things about culture wars and the culture of death and the culture of life, all of that discussion has been formulated by the Catholic faith, by the Catholic Church. In the book of Deuteronomy, God the Father says, I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that I have set before you life and death. Choose life, therefore, that you may live. If your hearts turn away and you will not hear, I declare to you today, you shall perish. You shall perish if you don't listen to the words of God and live your lives accordingly. That's a message to all of us. Since January 1973, too many Americans have chosen death. Too many Americans have chosen death. And we are surely on the road to our own destruction, both on this earth and in the next life. Every day in the United States, 4,400 children are dismembered in their mother's wombs. 4,400. 180 every hour. One every 20 seconds. Every 20 seconds. To commemorate those lives, this show's slightly under an hour long. Every 20 seconds, you're going to hear that. That represents that life that was just extinguished. This goes on every day in America, nonstop, every day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, every 20 seconds, a child is aborted in the United States. He was a murderer from the beginning. He was a murderer from the beginning. And he has nothing to do with the truth because there is no truth in him. The words of our blessed Lord about Satan. How did abortion get to be legal in the United States? In 1970, a woman by the name of Norma McCorvey was at a bar in Texas. She got drunk. She went home with a guy, got pregnant, and in March of 1970 decided that she did not want this child. But the laws on the books in Texas at the time prevented her from having an abortion. So she went to a feminist attorney who was hell-bent on getting rid of the abortion laws. That woman's name was Sarah Weddington. Sarah Weddington conferred with Norma McCorvey and said, since we're in Texas, the best way to get this law overturned is not to say that you have a right to this and everything else. It's let's get a court to be sympathetic to your cause. So we're not going to tell them you got drunk and went home and had sex with some guy. We're going to tell them that you were gang raped. And we're not only going to tell them you were gang raped, we're going to tell them that you were gang raped by a group of black men. He was a liar and a murderer from the beginning. The entire case that eventually made it to the Supreme Court, that we now know as Roe v. Wade, began as Norma McCorvey's story. I've interviewed Norma McCorvey. I have Norma McCorvey's phone number. I've talked to her on a number of occasions. I did an interview with Norma McCorvey standing on the steps of the U.S. Capitol with the Supreme Court behind her. And now, all these years later, if you talk to Norma McCorvey, she says, I want that law overturned. I want the court to reverse that position. I am now pro-life. There was another case, and lots of people don't know this. Lots of people don't know this. There was another case that was released, the results of the case, the findings of the case, the ruling was released on the same day by the U.S. Supreme Court. That case was called Doe v. Bolton. It was a companion case to Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court decided to hear both cases simultaneously and marry their findings together. Doe v. Bolton was a case brought by a 22-year-old woman by the name of Sandra Cano in Georgia. Georgia had very strict abortion laws prior to 1973. The only time you could have an abortion is if there were some very, 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 and I mean very strict guidelines met. Essentially, you had to be dying. The Supreme Court married the findings of that case to the findings in Roe v. Wade, and together Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton came together and made abortion on demand. You can have an abortion in the United States right up to labor for any reason you want to. So says the United States Supreme Court. The media is complicit in these lies that abortion is only available for the first 3 months. No, it is not. Abortion is available whenever you want it, for whatever reason you want it, anytime you want it. That's the case. That's the truth. In one afternoon, January 22nd, 1973, the mother's womb became the most dangerous place for a child. The mother's womb became the most dangerous place for a child. Today, 1 out of every 3 abortions, 1 out of every 3 pregnancies ends in abortion. He was a liar and a murderer from the beginning. The people who support abortion, and there are many who support abortion, lie about abortion. They say it's not human. They say it's not a person, not a baby. We don't support abortion. We support your choice for abortion. Liars. Liars. As Pope John Paul said, if it's not human, what is it? It's not a person. You say it's human, but it's not a person. What other kind of human is there than a human person? Do you know some other group of humans that aren't persons? The Nazis did. They called them Jews. Of course it's a baby. Of course it's a baby. And regarding the term pro-choice, talk about covering your shame. You know, those of you who advocate abortion, you know you're talking about abortion, but you won't use the word. You will not use that word, advocates of abortion. Well, I will. Abortion. Abortion, abortion, abortion. Death, killing, dismembering a baby. Let's call a spade, folks. That's what goes on. Call it what it is. And talk about liars. I'm Catholic, and I have to take one step out. This is not official church teaching, but I'm sitting up here and I have to say, from a personal standpoint, I think for any Catholic politician who supports abortion rights, that there is a special torture chamber in hell for you. I hope you don't go. I hope you convert. But look at the destruction and the chaos that you have brought to your church. You are nothing more than modern day Herods, King Herods, who will slaughter the innocents to hold on to your own power. That's all you are. You can hide behind your accolades, and I'm Senator this, and I'm U.S. Congressman the other, and I'm Governor whoever. You are murderers. You are murderers. And for all of those Catholic politicians who've said, well, I'm personally opposed to it. I just don't want to impose my morality on somebody else. Really? Really? Personally opposed people don't go to the rallies of pro-abortion candidates and give fiery speeches that these rights must hang out. Personally opposed people don't go solicit money for their campaigns and say, I'm personally opposed to what you stand for, but give me some of your money so I can get elected and still vote for your cause. Personally opposed people don't accept awards from people who believe and support and pay to have children dismembered in their mother's wombs. And by the way, what are you so personally opposed to? If this is okay, what are you so personally opposed to? The very fact that you say you are personally opposed immediately indicates that there's something to be opposed to, that you know that there is something immoral going on. How dare you use that double standard and hide behind your Catholic faith? Come out and show everybody what you are. Say what you are. Why won't you come out and say what you are? You're murderers, and you're hiding behind your faith. And you're usurping the truth of the Catholic Church, you Catholic pro-abortion politicians. You are King Herods. And if you don't change, you will have an eternity to pay. The reason they don't want to stand out and oppose it is because they really don't oppose it. They really don't oppose it. Why? How can you tell? Give them another thing that they think is immoral and ask them if they oppose that. Do they oppose slavery? Do they oppose discrimination? Do they oppose poverty? All of these things are immoral, and they're perfectly willing to impose their morality on those votes in Congress and in governorships, but they will not oppose this. And the reason they won't oppose it is because it lines their pockets with money which they use to keep themselves in power. And that's the truth. And that's the truth. What's worse, if there is something worse than killing a child in the womb as a politician, allowing that, it's that you are also contributing to the death of the truth. You're contributing to the death of the truth. Today, 1/3, 1 out of every 3 pregnancies in this country ends in abortion. We're going to come back right after this. Thank you very much, and welcome back to The One True Faith. Today our topic is the culture of death. And we are, if you're wondering what this face is, this is we're throwing a penny in here for every 20 seconds that goes by. Because every 20 seconds in the United States, a child is aborted. So if you're wondering what's that penny sound, that's what we're doing. Somebody should at least mark the deaths of these human beings. How did we get here? 1 out of every 3 pregnancies in the United States ends in abortion. Thank you, Roe v. Wade. More importantly, thank you, Satan. He was a liar and a murderer from the beginning. Our blessed Lord said that, and he ought to know he was there with him at the beginning. How did we get here? It's an answer that people aren't going to like. It's an answer that people aren't going to like. It was an answer that was first proposed brilliantly by Pope John Paul II. The same religious groups that will stand in the streets and picket about abortion and will stand around water coolers and try to preach their convictions about abortion to other people are many of the same people that will go home and use artificial birth control. That's how we got to where we are with abortion. Well, wait a second. What do you mean? Artificial contraception is that prevents a life from starting. Abortion ends it. Those two don't have anything to do with each other. That's true. But not entirely true. Not entirely true. As Pope John Paul II said, they are different fruits from the same tree. Why? Because they are both at their heart anti-life. They are anti-life. The entire root issue of where we are with regards to abortion lies at our understanding of what it means to be a person. Now, we all think we know what it means to be a person, but there are radically different ideas out in culture, out there, what it means to be a person. The American culture, the American civilization has fallen into a very dangerous understanding of what it means to be a person. Our laws, our entertainment industry, our dealings with each other, they have all separated the body from the person. We no longer view the person as an integral whole, and we no longer view ourselves that way. Why? Because it's easier. Because when we create an artificial understanding in our minds of what a person is, it gives us a license to then do whatever we want to with our bodies, participate in any sin we want, and still claim that I'm a good person. We have a flawed understanding, deeply flawed to the point of being evil, of what it means to be a person. In other words, what we mean by person today is that a person is a center of consciousness. that has feelings and thoughts and emotions and feels a certain way and desires and longings, and that is what it means to be a person. If you possess those qualities, you are a person. Congratulations. And the body is something secondary to that. The body becomes an instrument merely for you to use by yourself or with someone else to fulfill all of those longings and desires. It becomes a secondary thing, something to be able to be disposed of if we don't care about it. That belief stands in direct opposition to the will of Almighty God. God did not create us souls and centers of consciousness with a body attached. He created us body and soul, and fleshed soul. That is how we are created. And He made us male person and female person. He gave us genders. Those genders are located in our bodies and in our minds and in our thoughts. You cannot separate the two. You cannot separate the person from the body. But we have. We do it all the time. How does artificial contraception break this unity? It breaks it very simply. When a married couple, let's presume for a moment it's a married couple, when a married couple is engaged in the marital act, they give their whole person to this act, each of them to the other. And as long as there is nothing interrupting that, the whole person is involved. But the moment you bring something that breaks that unity, you are now understanding that my thoughts, feelings, desires, and wishes, this is what's paramount. My body is secondary to this because I'm not concerned about that. The body is merely an instrument for me to fulfill the longings of my consciousness. You break your understanding of body and soul. You rest your personhood in your soul, in your thoughts and in your feelings, and you place the body subordinate to that. That is not how God Almighty created us. And when we engage in that kind of behavior and introduce artificial contraception, you no longer see the person as ensouled flesh, but just as a mass of feelings and wants and desires. And that becomes paramount. Not the bringing of the person to this act, the whole person, body and soul, but just that locus, that center of consciousness that wants itself fulfilled. That's a very dangerous understanding of what we're talking about when we say that this is what a person is. Whether you consciously or unconsciously or subconsciously are aware of that, the second your thought, your thinking process starts heading down that road, you are going right where Satan wants you to. He was a liar and a murderer from the beginning. How does it lead to abortion? Well, it leads to abortion very simply. In this context, the body only is good insofar as it serves the needs of that conscious person. But what if the person isn't conscious of themselves? What if they're in the womb? What if they're in a coma? What if they have Alzheimer's? What if they're in extreme pain from something? Are they still a person? They don't even know that they have dreams for their future aspirations as they lay there quiet in the womb. They don't even know they're in a womb. They don't even know they exist. They fall outside a selfish culture's understanding of a person, a redefined understanding of a person. And here is where the argument for contraception now comes crashing home. being the very same support for abortion. If you do not consider pregnancy a good at this moment in your life, then you simply bypass it. You bypass it on the front end with artificial contraception, or you bypass it on the back end with abortion. There's the link. There's the link. Different fruits from the same tree. And what is the link? The link is I am going to do what I want to do with my own body. That's the link. How many times have you seen those signs at pro-abortion rallies? How many times have you seen those signs? It's my body. Get your rosary off my ovaries. My ovaries? As if there's something secondary down there, like you went and got them at the shelf, at the store? They're part of you. The body is who I am. This is how I was created. It's how you were created. It's how every one of us was created, body and soul. And we have destroyed this understanding through this back door of artificial contraception, artificial birth control. It is anti-life. That's the point. Contraception against life. That's the point. Satan knew that there was no way he was going to have an entire civilization that for 2,000 years had upheld the sanctity of life, all of a sudden flip on one day in 1973 and declare that these children are no longer human beings. So he mapped out his strategy very well. The first thing he had to do was destroy our notion of person and humanity. And he did that by appealing to our lust. 1973 did not begin the march to abortion in this country. When artificial contraception became a widely accepted form of birth control, or birth control became widely accepted, that began the march to abortion. In 1968, Pope Paul VI issued an encyclical called Humane Vitae, Human Life in Latin. And in that encyclical, he said, no, the church will not change its 2,000-year teaching on artificial contraception. It is wrong, it is sinful. In and of itself, it is sinful. And let me tell you some reasons why. Not only in and of itself is it sinful, but because of what it will do and the mentality that it will foster, it will lead to the degradation of women. It will lead to them becoming victims. It will lead to divorce. It will unleash the lusts of males because now you can have sex and there will be supposedly no consequences for you for that sex. It will destroy the family. It will destroy the world. Read Humane Vitae. Paul VI was not a prophet. He was just a very smart man who was pope, who looked down the road and said, you do this, and this will follow. How did this happen? How did this happen? This will be another thing that people will not want to hear. How did we get to this point? How did the world arrive on this doorstep of evil? By the complicity of every major Protestant religion in the United States that caved into the culture of death. That's how. Every major Protestant religion caved in to the culture of death in this country. It all began in 1930 at a conference called Lambeth of the Anglican Church. You know, for centuries, if you're of the Lutheran faith, go back and read Martin Luther. Go back and read some of his writings. Martin Luther condemned artificial birth control out of hand. If you belong to a Reformed religion, one of the Reformed churches, Go back and read John Calvin. He condemned artificial contraception out of hand. Ulrich Zwingli condemned it out of hand. Every major Protestant reformer condemned artificial contraception out of hand. They saw the evil. Why did this country dive into a pool of condoms and birth control pills and IUDs and sterilization and on and on? Why did that happen? Because the Christian courage was abandoned and exchanged for the lie. That's why. Why? So that we could all live out our lustful desires. Call a spade, folks. Ultimately, we are on this doorstep of evil because Catholics and Christians abandoned the truth in their own personal lives. And that's what always happens. That is what always happens. Ariel Durant, the great world historian, said, before a culture can be first attacked and destroyed from without, it must first rot from within. Welcome to the rotting. Today, all churches that call themselves Christian, all of them accept artificial contraception. Every last one of them. Of all the churches that call themselves Christian, only one still stands up and says, no, it is a lie. That church is the Holy Catholic Church. It is the only church that still stands up and says that. The bride of Christ standing alone in front of Herod and Pontius Pilate, answering the question, what is truth? She condemns it because she knows it is sinful in and of itself, and it will end in abortion. Because the whole understanding of what we mean by person, how God Almighty made us, has been perverted by our lustful natures. Once you see a person in terms of just a conscious life, a life that must first be lived with quality of life, you will allow persons who fall outside that definition to be killed. You will dismember a baby every 20 seconds. You will use their body parts for research. You will use their remains in cosmetics to make yourselves more beautiful. You will hatch them in laboratories for your own experimentation. You will create them in petri dishes because you think you have a right to a child. You will allow them to be almost totally born, and you will have their brains sucked out of their skulls. You will allow them to be killed because of a deformation in their body. You will allow people to be starved to death because they're in a coma. You will allow people to be euthanized because life has just become too tough today. You will pass laws to enshrine all of these principles in your Constitution. You will destroy 45 million babies with no end in sight. You will become numb to the evil. You will elect politicians who will profit from the dimming of your intellects. You will become a culture of death. You will have believed the lie. You will become a nation of killers. And you will perish. If your hearts turn away and you will not hear me, I declare to you today, you shall perish. The words of God the Father to His chosen people. The evil is so great. The evil is so great that only God Himself may reverse this. But don't lose heart, because there is hope in all of this. God desires to use us to end that. God could do away with abortion with a thought, but He wants to use us to do it. For Catholics who are using artificial contraception, stop. Just stop. In the end, this has all happened because the Church, the Catholic Church, infused with the fullness of truth, has stopped being courageous. Too many of her members and her clergy threw aside the truth and have believed in the lie and are living the lie. Only Jesus Christ Himself will put an end to abortion, and for Catholics, that means one thing: recourse to the Holy Eucharist, to the Blessed Sacrament. That is the only thing that will end abortion in this country. And when it ends in this country, it will end in the world. We are the leaders of the world, whether other nations refuse to admit that or not. What we do in America gets exported to every country in the world. And if we become holy and God-fearing, then the rest of the world will follow suit. But how do you move a country? How do I move a country? I'm sitting at home. What do I do? I'm only one person. You become holy. We must all become saints now, today, this minute. Don't walk out of this show. Don't turn off the television and go, wow, that was really interesting. Wow, I've never heard that before. Oh, that was great. Why don't they say that more often? And then go about your lives as usual. Stop and change your lives. All of us, me, you, all of us, change. We must become holy. We are called to be saints. Jesus Christ came to earth, established a church, and is with that church in the body, blood, soul, and divinity. Body, blood, soul, and divinity. The person of Jesus Christ is right there at our disposal. If you are Catholic, go to Him. Ask for the grace for moral conversion. Pray. Become a channel of that grace. That is why He has Himself locked up in the tabernacles of the world, so that we will go to Him, change ourselves, and change the world. And don't say it can't be done. 12 women and a handful of men brought the Roman Empire to its knees and vanquished it because they cooperated with the grace of God. It took them centuries, but it happened. This evil of abortion can be eradicated if we become holier. We must become saints. We must become saints. If you are Catholic, become holier. If you're not Catholic, convert. Come to Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. There will be no end to abortion. You can march all you want. You can hand out campaign flyers all you want. Those are good things. Continue to do them. They by themselves will not bring an end to this Holocaust. They will not. There will be no end to abortion in the natural order without us becoming saints and having recourse to Jesus' body and blood in the Blessed Sacrament. We'll be right back with questions from the studio audience right after this. When, according to the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus was walking around in the region of Caesarea Philippi, and he turned to his apostles, and he said, "Who do people say that I am?" And as the story progresses, Peter said, "You are the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus said, "Blessed are you, Simon. Blessed are you, Simon, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And moreover, for my part, I say unto you, you are Peter, the rock, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it." We've talked about some very sobering things here today, and I think we all know, at least have an inkling of what the tremendous battle is, the evil that has to be overcome in this world. But think for a moment. We have been blessed, particularly as Catholics, with all of the tools to overcome this evil. And this might be a bit out of line, but as a Catholic whose duty is to do good and battle evil, I have my own sort of personal message for the liar and the murderer. You will not win. You will not win. Satan, you were defeated in eternity. You will be defeated in time. The sons and daughters of men will occupy the thrones that you and your demon legions once occupied in heaven. In fact, we are already on those thrones. Jesus Christ came to earth to give his body and blood so that we could have those seats in heaven. And by the will of God, we are having those seats. Satan, you will be defeated, and it will start with us cooperating with the grace of God. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.